Good evening, and welcome to this edition of Conversations with Lothrop. We're beginning a new season, and we're looking forward to having some guests to interview. I think you will enjoy meeting through television and hearing what they have to share with us. Tonight, we're very honored to have Oberlin's now not-so-new city auditor, Salvatore Talarico, who came to Oberlin I think on the 27th of September, and this is the 21st, so it's almost an anniversary interview that we're doing here today, right. And we're delighted you're here.
Thank you.
He began his work in Oberlin just a year ago, as I said. For the previous 7 years, he served the city of Parma as an assistant auditor. For that, he worked for the Sterling Company in Akron as an interior auditor, and earlier was a staff examiner for the Trust Company in Cleveland, so he's had quite a wide background that has brought to Oberlin. What was your hometown?
Originally in Cleveland.
Cleveland.
That's where we moved when we moved from Italy, and then grew up in Cleveland, and then moved out to Parma in '85.
Mm-hmm. So you also lived in Parma before you were working there?
Yes.
Yeah. And where'd you go to college? Where'd you get your training?
Cleveland State University.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which is looking for a new president, I notice now.
That's right.
You're not a candidate for
No.
Okay. Tell us what led you into the field of finance.
Well, that started in college. I decided to go business rather than arts and sciences, and of the business majors, I preferred accounting, and the rest was history. Decided to get into internal auditing because it gave me a variety of tasks, not just accounting work day to day. I was able to do audits throughout the company, and also do some traveling. So it was a great way to get a taste for the whole corporate environment, not just accounting.
Are you a CPA?
No.
But you probably know as much or more than some of them do, I imagine.
I'm certified as, I just recently picked up my certification through the Municipal Treasurers Association of the United States and Canada. So I have that certification. And then the GFOA also offers a government certification. That's probably what I'll work towards next, which is more tailored towards governments.
No. You have to take coursework for that?
There are courseworks and tests, similar to the CPA exam.
Okay. I might add that the city auditor is one of 4 positions that the City Council of Oberlin can appoint. The others are the city manager and the city solicitor and the city clerk. And all of the rest of them the city manager appoints, or they get their jobs through civil service. So this is one of the big 4, as this we might say. Would you tell us about the range of duties that your office performs?
Tremendous range of duties, Dick. We have not only budgeting, which takes up a great deal of time in the initial preparation stages, but also in monitoring later on. We have utility billing, and that includes electric, water, sewer, refuse, and emergency lighting. And then we also have income tax collections, payroll, I think I mentioned accounts payable, and we always prepare reports for council and for the administration. Whenever there's anything involved at the city, it almost always involves finance department because it has to deal with some sort of appropriation or money being expended. So we get involved in a lot, basically everything.
How many people do you have on your staff to help you?
5 full-times, including myself, and 1 part-time.
1 part-time. Busy office.
Right.
What is there any one thing that's a particular challenge?
The challenge is, one particular challenge is probably utilities. It's a matter of keeping up with the collections, and the key there is determining who really has hardships that we can refer on to other agencies. We can probably talk about that.
Yeah, I think we can.
But that's probably the biggest challenge, determining who is truly needy and getting this additional help from outside
Do you have much
agencies.
problem with arrearage from people who can't pay?
Small percentage, but those take up a lot of time to deal with, and that's probably the biggest challenge.
You have to do a lot of that personally.
Yes, usually they start with the Charlotte or Lisa, and then they end up in my office if they, for some reason, want to talk to someone else. But Lisa and Charlotte do a very good job of handling those.
What of the duties in your office give you the most pleasure?
Well, I think probably budgeting. If you get it right the first time, you have to spend less time later on. And last year it was kind of crunch time because I started late in September and we were already into the process. So I didn't get enough time to really get familiar with all the accounts in order to put some good time up front. So we've made some adjustments along the way. But this year is going to be a little different. We've already started. And again, the more time we put in up front, less we have to fiddle with it later. And I think anything that we do in our department, if we do it well enough, it's going to save money or streamline the operations. Ultimately, hopefully it will keep down the cost of service, which will keep down taxes, which support us.
There are state guidelines, I understand, for how you do your work, how all auditors in public office have to do their work. Is there anything that you could tell us about how that works, how you dovetail with the state audits people?
There are many legal issues that we have to deal with and guidelines from the state as a city as a whole. In addition, we also have some that are just specific to finance. And there's a compliance manual from the state that's probably about 2.5, 3 inches thick that gives us guidelines that we need to follow, specifically with contracts to make sure that if it's over a certain dollar amount, it goes out for bidding and gets council approval, and then all pay and the appropriation is there. The appropriation meaning that the council has budgeted X amount of dollars for that contract or project. So there's a lot of T's to be crossed and I's to be dotted when it comes to contracts and, in general, state regulations regarding our office. All expenditures have to be approved by the chief fiscal officer, which in the city of Oberlin, it's the city auditor. That can change from city to city because some are statutory, some are chartered. We're chartered. The difference meaning that the statutory is a set up, the city government is set up by state code, therefore statutory, meaning there's an elected mayor, an elected finance or auditor, an elected treasurer, an elected law director. We're chartered, so we're home rule. We decided, the city, the residents decided how we wanted to structure our government. And that's why we have the elected council and city manager, city auditor, and solicitor and clerk.
Most Oberlin people come to your office to pay utility bills, and that's probably the only contact most of them, I suppose, in Oberlin have. How many utility customers, or how should I put this? Let's divide it up. How many residential customers have we got?
We have about 2,900 residential and about 350 commercial customers. And we do get quite a few people that come into the office rather than mailing or putting them in our Dropbox. And
is the Dropbox proving helpful?
It is. It is. There's one drive-through in the back lot, which the folks can just drive by, just like a mailbox, and actually the mailbox right next to it too. You can drop it in the Dropbox. We pick them up in the morning and in the afternoon. We also have a Dropbox right by the front door.
Do you ever find in that one in the back some U.S. mail that got in there?
Oh, I'm sure there's been some in there. The ladies haven't mentioned it, but I'm sure there's been in there. Yeah.
Well, as an auditor, you have a large role to play along with the city manager in on the budget preparation, and we've touched on that just a little bit. How do you go about preparing a budget for a city like Oberlin, and when do you have to begin that?
Actually, we're starting right now. We started probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago. We started with putting together a schedule. The city manager put together a tentative schedule. We reviewed it together. And the first part is looking at capital expenditures. City manager has requested all the department heads to submit a proposal for any capital type of expenditures, meaning not ordinary expenses that happen every year, things like a new car or a new truck or a major piece of equipment. And those have started to come in. And we look at those first because that takes a little more time and a little more planning when it comes to preparing the operating budget. And we can, and that at that point we know what we can afford and what we can't. The second part is usually then starting to take a look at the revenue projections for next year, because we can only spend what we're planning on taking in. It's a very easy calculation. You can only spend what you take in, just like at home. And we project the revenues, estimate what we're going to carry over in cash, and then that's what we have available to appropriate, what council has available to appropriate for expenditures in both the operating funds, the day-to-day expenses, which include payroll, benefits, training, and then also what we can appropriate for these capital expenditures. And in some cases, if we need to issue debt, whether it's a bond or a note or just a long-term lease, to be able to gain a piece of equipment now rather than waiting, we can do that. That hasn't happened in Oberlin in the past. We're kind of a pay-as-we-go kind of a community, which is good. We tend to save up the money and then buy it cash. Sometimes, like we may have an instance in the near future, if we buy a rescue vehicle, that we may want to finance it over the next 5 years rather than depleting some of the funds in our capital fund.
Now, two questions. What is the total city budget for, say, 2001? Can you tell us that
Right, the
offhand?
total budget's about $36 million. It's a little high this year because we had some, we had about $4 million of improvements over at the electric plant. So it's a little higher than normal because that money had to be appropriated in order to be spent. So around 30 for total city budget.
And of that budget, the electric utility would probably be the largest chunk, wouldn't
Correct,
it? Because that's
correct. The operating budget's about $8 million.
Let's see. Let's talk a little bit here about sources of income. Now, we know that the utilities should be self-supporting,
Correct,
hopefully.
correct.
But we have that thing called the general fund, which is what I think the public knows the most about, because it's members of the public that come and want pieces of that occasionally for this or that.
Right.
And probably that, would I be right in saying that's the one that probably council can play the most with of all of them, even with limitations, of course.
Right. With limitations, correct, because so much of the general fund is to pay for salaries and benefits. But that is the place where there's more discretion. The general fund is about $5 million, and the main source of revenue, of course, as you probably hit on already, is the income tax, and that accounts for about $2 million.
And some property tax goes into that.
Property tax is a smaller portion. It's about $350,000 a year for general fund.
Are we getting much in inheritance taxes these days?
Yes, we are. We're getting about, I think it's 250 or 300,000. That's going to go away, though. The state has changed the law, and over the next couple of years, that's going to go away. That the amount of the deduction on inheritance tax is increasing, and what is taxable is decreasing. So that source of revenue is going to be depleted in the next couple of years. So that's one challenge that we've known about for a couple of years that we're going to have to deal with.
I guess you have to say enjoy it while you have it. Or
Right.
something.
Right.
And funds that you're not using at the moment get invested.
Correct.
And I gather there are guidelines from the state on how you do that. And
More guidelines, that's right.
and,
Yeah.
limits on what you can and cannot. For example, you can't play the stock market.
No. And, well, you know, if we wanted to, council would have to approve that.
I see.
But I would never recommend that to any
No,
council
no.
at all.
We've talked about the income tax a little bit, and it's a tax basically on wages and rental income, as I recall. Do you expect to see a drop in it in the next year from, say, this year?
We took our biggest hit when Bayer left town, and right now we don't anticipate any other major taxpayer leaving anytime soon. So over, you know, we projected a decrease or flat for this year in income tax. But going into next year, we'll probably project either flat or a 1% increase, because right now we don't know what the economy is going to do. There are so many things that are going on around us today, and I don't even have to begin to mention some of them, that are affecting the economy. And sooner or later, they're going to affect our base here, our commercial customers and our commercial park. So we don't know. So that's why it's better to go in at a flat conservative figure from this year, basically flat into next year, or possibly a 1% increase.
Are your projections for last year coming true pretty closely
Pretty
for
close,
2001?
right.
Right. Great. Let's talk about RITA.
Yes.
RITA. Could you tell us what that means?
RITA stands, the RITA stands for Regional Income Tax Agency. It is a council of governments. It's set up by, I think it's like 88 different municipal governments. That it's set up just like a government agency, meaning their employees pay into the public employee retirement system, and they are considered public employees. We, as Oberlin, once council has just recently approved the ordinance for us to get involved with RITA, once we're members, all the agreements are signed, we have an equal vote, just like the largest city in RITA does and the smallest city in RITA. We all have an equal vote in how the organization is run. And that's a wonderful thing. And the other thing that's great about this program is that we still maintain our own tax code. Our city determines what the tax code is. They just apply it to the residents of Oberlin and the other corporate customers.
Are there any particular changes that Oberlin people will see on January 1st when that
There is
takes
one
place?
significant change. And in order to be a member in RITA and make sure that everyone's paying their fair share, is that there's a mandatory filing. Previously, if all your wages were properly deducted from your employer, then you didn't have to file. Starting in January, everyone will have to file at least one time. If you're retired and your sole source of income is Social Security or pension, you fill out the form one time. It's a very short form, name, address, check off the reason why you don't need to file your tax returns, and sign it and return it to RITA. And then you're done. As long as you don't get another job or part-time job where you start earning income, you won't have to file any longer. But everyone else, as long as you're earning income, you will have to file each year. The great thing about RITA is that if you don't want to calculate your own taxes, have no interest, by March 30th, instead of the due date for our city, which is April 30th, you send the form into RITA by March 30th, sign it, attach your W-2s, they'll calculate a bill for you, and if necessary, they'll send you a bill.
Good.
So.
And it will take some pressure off of you people down there.
Right. We have one employee that's been handling our income tax collection, our accounts payable, and our bank reconciliations, and that's a lot of work.
Is she going to be in tears at the loss of this?
No.
You're going to find something for her to do.
I think she's just going to be able to do her job much better and spend more time, more quality time with the other functions, which is what we needed.
Well, we'll hope that'll work well. Once people get used to it, I doubt
Right.
there'll be any... I forgot to ask, there's a cost to the city for this.
There is. There is a 3% retainer. Our total collections for income taxes each year is about $4 million. So by doing the math, that's about $120,000 a year that they will retain, RITA will retain. And that is not a cost to the city, that's just a retainer. At the end of the year, they determine what the cost is for operating RITA in whole. And then they determine the transactions for every member in total, divide that out, and determine what each member's share of that cost is. So normally, on average, it ends up being about half of what they retain. So that's about $60,000. We currently spend about $25,000 a year between forms and mailings and postage and keeping our software up to date. So that leaves about another $35,000 of actual cost. I've been told that historically, all the cities that get into RITA, is that by having mandatory filing, it more than pays for itself.
Because you catch some people that have not been in the net
Right,
before.
right. And in most of those cases, there are very few people who are actually trying not to purposely pay their taxes. It's mainly oversights. And that's the kind of thing that will start to come in and will pay for that extra $35,000.
So it could be a wash for you.
A wash, and we're probably looking at additional income because of it. Right.
And
Overall.
as a finance person, you're not going to be unhappy about that.
No, as long as
No.
everyone's paying their fair share,
Yeah.
then we don't have to increase for everyone else. Correct.
You mentioned earlier utility bill payments, and that some people have problems with that. I believe we have a thing called a caring fund. Would you tell us about that?
Sure. It's a wonderful program. It was started about 17 or 18 years ago, and we send out a letter to all of our utility customers, and actually one is about to go out in the next couple of weeks, asking for donations to go into the caring fund. This fund is completely separate from all other city funds. It can only be used to help customers, residents who can't afford, who are having a true hardship. And what happens is when someone is having a hardship, they call and say, I can't pay the bill. We refer them over to community services. They make a recommendation to us and send us over a form as to how much we should pay out of the caring fund towards their utility bill. And hopefully when the letter goes out to all the residents that they go ahead and send some money in so that we can help other residents who are in true need. And that's the key again for our office and for community services more so, is determining who really is in need and who is just...
Have you any sense about how many people in a year, say, might be helped on a thing like that?
Oh boy, different people, maybe...
separate individuals.
Separate individuals. They may be helped more than one time.
Yes,
depending.
I was wondering about the separate...
Separate. It could be as many as a couple of hundred. I don't know specifically, and that'll change depending.
But community services helps you with that then?
Correct.
Yeah, so
right.
Do they do some of the screenings? For
Yes,
you? Yeah,
yes.
That's
They
helpful.
also have their own funds that they can actually send to the city on behalf of one of our residences, and they also have other programs within the county. There are many programs that are available. So if someone is having a hardship, rather than getting shut off, if they call us and let us know, we'll work with them. We'll do whatever we can to keep the power on so that they can do whatever they need to do.
Are we still under a ban of turning off utilities during the winter months?
Well, there is a ban. There isn't really a ban, so to speak. It's recommended that we don't.
Okay.
But I believe that what might be better is because what's happening in the springtime, we have so many folks that have these huge balances that can't afford. So we're going to try to work on a month-by-month throughout the winter with anyone that goes delinquent so that we don't have that serious problem in the spring. I think that if we try to take it in smaller chunks, the residents, whoever is having a hardship, can have a better time of trying to pay it off. Because in the springtime, you're looking at a huge balance. It's almost insurmountable.
Speaking of large chunks of money, there are times when the city invests money. How do we do that? How do you decide where to invest?
Right.
Well, we talked about not the stock market.
That's correct. We, the state offers a pooled cash fund, and they call it STAR Ohio. It's, I think it stands for State Treasury Asset Reserve Fund. And we can, it's very liquid. It's just like a bank account. But they invest in short-term treasury notes and T-bills and CDs. So they're getting a higher yield than what we can get at the local bank. And we could even cut checks out of that account if we need to. So we use that quite a bit because it's one of the tools for investments that's allowed for municipal governments. And we also invest in CDs. But other than that,
we do treasury bonds at all?
We can if we feel that we have enough money to lock in for that amount of time. If we're going to go that long, we'll probably go with a CD.
So you do some short range investing, some long range. You have
right. We have some 6 months, some a year. Rarely do we go out 2 years. About 1 year is the extent of it. We're more concerned with the return of the principal and not the return on the principal.
Does your job here differ much from what it was in Parma? Or is
It's quite different.
Is it?
Yeah, it's quite different. The population in Parma was about 80,000, and here it's about 8,000. So we have the volume of accounts payable and payroll may be lower, but the services we offer as a small city is much greater. You know, in a city like Parma, we had water and sewer by the city of Cleveland, electric by illuminating company, and here, and the trash collection was also outsourced.
So you didn't have to do any billing for any of those things?
No. But on the offset was that the much bigger budget was almost a $70 million budget.
Mm-hmm.
But here we get involved in so many, there are so many city employees here, directors especially, that wear so many hats because of all the different types of responsibility that are involved. Take for instance, we run an electric department, and it's not just bringing in through the transmission lines and channeling it out a distribution system. We actually generate, and so that's a big operation. We have our own sewer, water department, and even our own storm sewer division, in addition to everything else, which is police, fire, and normal services. So
Makes for an interesting day, doesn't it?
It sure does. Yeah.
Well, we're just about at the end. Is there anything you would like to add?
Well, one thing that's wonderful about the city of Oberlin is, and in particular the city government itself, is the employees. The employees really care about their job and really care about the citizens and this community. And I don't think that gets noticed too often, but I notice it because I see it every day. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy to work with all those people. Mm-hmm.
I notice when I come into your office, for example, that ladies are always very busy and they're always very pleasant and seem to be enjoying being there.
Well, thank you.
And I hope that's true throughout
true.
But I sense it is pretty much throughout the whole city. People come and stay 30 years, and that's,
right.
I think, a good sign.
Yeah, we have a great crew, citywide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we certainly thank you so much for being with us here tonight. And normally we will give you a tape of the show.
Okay.
And normally we would give you a mug, a souvenir mug that looks like this. But as you can see, I don't think we're going to bother to. We're not going to give you the styrofoam. But these mugs are in order, and you will get one as soon as we get them.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you out there who have listened to us tonight. And in October, end of October, we will have another interesting guest to interview. Until then, this is Richard Lothrop saying thank you very much and good evening.